Late spring tactics for landing slab-sized crappie. The old angler's secret. There's a quiet magic to late spring fishing when the rivers run clearer, the willows whisper in the breeze, and the water begins to warm just enough to stir the larger fish from their deeper hiding spots. This is the prime season for crappie, especially the big ones, but many anglers find themselves hauling in nothing but small fry, or worse, returning empty-handed. I've been there. Like many, I thought I knew what I was doing. Flashy bait, frequent casts, precision rigs. But it wasn't until I spent time learning from the seasoned old anglers in my hometown, men who've spent decades beside slow-moving rivers and silty banks, that I truly began to understand how to catch the really big crappie. These old-timers didn't catch many fish in a day, but every one they pulled in was a slab, broad as a grown man's hand. In contrast, I used to reel in far more fish than they did, but most were no bigger than a child's palm. That all changed once I adopted their methods. The problem with conventional tactics back then, my typical strategy was to toss in a generous handful of fermented grain to bait the area, then cast with fine particle lures designed to maximize frequency and attract fish fast. Early on, I might catch a couple of decent-sized ones, but as time passed, the bites kept coming and the fish kept getting smaller. It's a common problem. The fine, clouding bait works too well. It draws in schools of small, aggressive crappie. The larger ones, more cautious by nature, won't fight for food against a swarm of Instead, they linger around the outskirts of the bait zone, circling warily, rarely committing to a bite. So why do the old-timers catch only the big ones? Their approach is the complete opposite. No fancy mixes, no frenzied bait clouds, just a quiet handful of soaked grains and a pair of worms on a double hook, lying still on the riverbed. They wait patiently, often for just a few strong bites throughout the day, but each one is a trophy. Subtlety over speed. The two-spot method. Inspired by this, I changed my strategy. I started creating 2 baited spots instead of 1. The first, a primary spot, was prepared like usual, with a clouding bait mix meant to attract fish, but about half a meter to a meter beyond that, I'd set a secondary, much smaller baited area using a light, subtle mix with very mild scent. During the initial phase of fishing, I'd focus on the near spot with my standard techniques, quick casts and a lure with good dispersion. But as soon as I started catching nothing but smaller crappie, I'd switch. Out came the longer rod, a larger hook size, and instead of frequent casting, I'd carefully drop a simple baited hook into the farther, quieter spot. No bright lures, no red worms, which seem to attract more small fish. Just a plump earthworm or a kneaded dough bait that barely breaks apart in water. The goal here is to avoid creating a feeding frenzy, just enough to tempt the big fish that have been circling but staying away. Patience is the real bait one. Crucial rule. When fishing the secondary spot, avoid casting frequently. Wild crappie are notoriously wary, especially the big ones. If there's too much motion, too many splashes, they'll vanish. Give each cast 3 to 5 minutes. Let the weight rest on the bottom. Hooks spread flat, inviting a cautious crappie to investigate at its own pace. Also, fine-tune your float. Adjust it so that with no bait, you see 2 marks above water. Once baited, you should see 3. This ensures your rig sits just right, the hooks resting on the bottom, the bait perfectly accessible. Final thoughts. Since adopting these old-school techniques, I've consistently caught more large crappie than ever before. Not only that, the entire fishing experience has become more peaceful, more intuitive, and more satisfying. So next time you find yourself on the bank of a quiet river in late spring, remember, sometimes less is more. Slow down, trust the stillness, and when that float finally dips, chances are it's not just another small fry but the big one you've been waiting for.